We are so fortunate to be able to include with this collection the extraordinary Door of Hope collection of dolls from Mary Eveline Sicard. People who know me know that I have a kind of a fixation on what I call the long-lost collections hidden in plain sight. That's what the Mary Eveline Sicard collection of Door of Hope dolls are. They've actually been in her possession the whole time, but I first became acquainted with them when I came across this book written in 1983, The Doll Collector's Manual, put out by the Doll Collectors of America. And in that book is this wonderful article on identifying Door of Hope dolls by Mary Eveline Sicard. And in the how many years is that I've been cataloging since that time, this has been my go-to source for identifying rare figures. So when she called us and said, I'd like to present my collection to people in your catalogs, I said, I can't wait to watch the collection and see the collection, and now I can't wait to share it with you. Some of the high notes of her collection are her brides and grooms from various time periods. And I have up on the stool here to show you the very traditional bride. Now, what I should show you is that she has the veil that is covering her face at the beginning. The groom is not seeing her. The veil covers her face with the wonderful tassels and beads, and then after the ceremony, of course, the veil goes to the back, and she still has the tassels, but her face is now exposed. Let me show you when we take her headdress off, her wonderful carved hair. The dolls are carved of a Chinese type of fruit wood, and they have firmly stuffed muslin bodies, and then very, very stylized hair. I want to show you on her hairline. Do you see this thin line along the top of the head? That was from a custom of plucking hairs from the bride-to-be on the day of the wedding. That would be done by the women in the family. Very, very strong custom. I have seen many of the brides, of the traditional brides, and this one is, in my mind, wonderful. Now, let me just talk to you about costumes on all of these Door of Hope dolls. You know that I study costumes for French dolls and German dolls, and I'm really taken with any of the couturier details that are done on the costumes. I don't think anything exceeds the workmanship that has been done on the tiny miniature costumes. These dolls are 11 and 12 inches, and the costume work that is done on that is absolutely extraordinary. While the camera's showing you around to different details of the dolls, let me tell you a little bit of a background from them. The dolls were from the Door of Hope mission, an Episcopal Church mission in Shanghai, founded in 1901. And they were designed to help bring young orphans or street girls in and to teach them how to sew and to give them a living. Many of them that were brought into the mission never had handled a needle in their life. They didn't know how to sew. And that was all taught to them so they could have a future career, a future work. And the work that they did was absolutely unbelievable. In the early research on Door of Hope, it was said that the girls themselves did the carving, and later research has kind of come to show that there actually were skilled craftsmen, wood craftsmen, who made the doll heads, and then the costumes were put on them by the girls. So how did these dolls come to America? It's very, very interesting in several ways. In 1910, for example, Miss Edith Weld in Boston went to a lecture where she heard Bishop Theodore Ludlow speak about, this is awful, but this is what it was. That is, he was a member of the Episcopalian group on the study of alien races, which is what they call that commission. And she went and spoke and heard him speak. And in speaking, she learned about these dolls, which told about the various costumes and the various occupations and persons that were represented, and she became fascinated with them. She contacted the Door of Hope mission in Shanghai and ordered a group of 24 dolls, and many of those are the dolls that you see here because Ms. Sicard was lucky enough to have them come into her possession, and some extremely, extremely rare examples. The majority of Door of Hope dolls that came to America came through two early importing houses of dolls that worked with doll makers all over the world seeking really finely crafted dolls that they would write a little monthly newsletter send it out to doll collectors all over the United States, and they would buy dolls. One of this was Kimport dolls of in Mid-American. I wanted to show you something interesting, because here is an early ad from the Kimport dolls advertising the Door of Hope dolls. This is also in Mary Eveline Sicard's article in this Doll Collector's Journal. And what I find particularly fascinating is that she calls them museum treasure dolls brought out from tragic Shanghai. And so she had them offered, and she sold, I believe there were, in the first group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 different models that she was offering. And the other imported group was just a sole woman, lived in Baltimore, Maryland. Name was Elsie Krug, and she also did a newsletter, and she would import dolls from around the world and sell them to collectors. These seem to be the two biggest sources of Door of Hope dolls. When I say biggest sources, please understand the dolls are really rare to find. Very, very precious at the time. You could get very few, and there were very sporadic periods when the dolls could not even be sent out of China. So they're wonderful to find. Well, enough talk. Let's go on and let's actually look at the dolls. You're going to see some of them, by the way, such as this bride that has a paper label sewn to the front of her that says bride. Any of them that you see that have that original label, that was the label on the dolls that were sent to Miss Edith Weld when she first imported them for her own use and her own pleasure in 1910. But such extraordinary workmanship. Here we have the traditional bride with the veil and then turning it around after she's married. She even has such details as the hanky. She has the boot styled with the upturned toes for the tiny bound feet. One of the ways you are able to identify the traditional brides. And of course her handsome young groom with his wonderful hat and the attached queue coming out of the back of his head, and the wonderful medallion embroidery. He looks so young. And then I want to show you another. This one is known as the Imperial Bride because of the gold embroidery on her tunic. Absolutely wonderful. The silk tassels coming down, again the bound feet, fabulous headdress. We're going to take it off and show it to you so you can see it in great detail. Look at the beading on the top, the multicolored tassels coming around, the silk pom-pom, just absolutely beautiful. And look at the detail of the comb at the back of her hair. Unbelievable. The painting on these dolls is very, very unusual because it's not a deep, rich painting. On the faces in particular, it's more like the features are tinted. Very, very finely done. I wish you could see the multi-layers on all of these costumes, but they're so perfectly preserved, we're not going to lift them up to show you. But you've seen her hair, and then after the ceremony, then her headdress goes on, and her beautiful face is exposed to her new husband. Now the brides continue to be made, and we have here another one of the modern brides, and this is quite unusual. She has a tassel, she has the embroidered skirt. Please look at her feet, however, and you see that the feet are different. They are little slippers because the feet are now flat, and they're little embroidered slippers. They're not the turned up shoes for the bound feet, which are no longer being done. Look at her headdress, very, very different. No beading covering her face. Her face is right out there for her husband to see before the ceremony. And it's a wonderful headdress, nevertheless. I'm going to turn it so you can see it from the sides. Please look at her jacket flaps when you see it, her tunic flaps. Very, very refined, aristocratic family. And when I take it off, look at this. Look at her hair. Very, very different style of hair. Absolutely wonderful. And her smiling face with a part line going down the entire back of her head and then ending in those two little coiled braids. And then we have, I think these are kind of my favorite because these guys are pretty happy they're getting married. This is another one of the pair of the modern bride and groom. When I say modern, please understand I'm talking in the 1920s. Modern in the sense that times had changed, not modern like this was yesterday. This was 1920 when you no longer had the bound feet, and the headdress issue had changed to some extent. And once again, look at the girl. Look at those beautiful slippers. I hope the camera's able to pick those up. They're absolutely wonderful. She has a different type of tunic entirely, has beautiful work on it, beautiful embroidery work in detail. Turn it around so you can see it all the way around. And our fine gentleman has a big poppy on the front of his jacket. They both have these absolutely wonderful smiling faces. Well, appropriately, we will move on from the wedding to the children in the new family group. And they did some wonderful, wonderful children. And I don't know, to some of the Door of Hope collectors, the children are their favorite, and I can certainly understand why. Well, every Door of Hope family needed to have the ama, which was the nurse, the nanny, and we have this wonderful example of the ama with a child, a little child on her back with this wonderful embroidered silk collar, the little cotton suit, and look at the carrier. There is a design that could be worked on today because people now carry the children on their backs or on their stomachs, again, little babies, and this is a design that could be developed. It was woven cord with a very decorative embroidered silk panel at the back, and the baby would be wrapped and would be coming over the ama's shoulder, and just a wonderful piece. As a child got a little older, they could have a bunting. And this is a wonderful piece because the child has the pom-pom, has the ears on the hat, and when you take it out, you can see that her little pants match the lining of the bunting. Very, very appropriate to do. And while I have her out, let me just show you her little, she made to make her look like a little kitten. The little hooded collarette with the ears, the built-in ears, and the pom-poms. And then we have another child, and this child is absolutely wonderful because check out her feet. Look at the little cat heads on her feet, absolutely wonderful. And when I turn her around, you can see, the red silk cap and the matching collarette with their little embroidery and the little flaps or ear designs with silk fringe on the outer edge. Just wonderful, minute, intricate, tiny detailing on all of these. And as the children get a little older, we have a girl, and she has the false hair. This is a very popular style in China, that you would have a hat with silk fringes coming down, which was simulating the actual hair of the child. But when you remove the cap, there was actually a real hair queue on real children coming down the back. And in this case, on the Door of Hope, there's the painted black pate, and then the cap with the false hair that would go over the pate. Again, with a wonderful costume. You should know that every one of these costumes is layered and layered and layered. Very, very authentic. Beautiful fabrics. Another little girl with the silk fringed hair. A very handsome young man with his red cap, his little upturned shoes, and little coral pink detailing on his silk jacket. Another wonderful fellow, and he has a fitted leather cap, which is very, very uniquely styled, almost what we would call a beanie style. Very wonderful. And finally, another little child, a variation. The children, they were made in certain sizes and certain styles, but there would be so much variation in the wonderful fabrics and color of designs that it made for, well, you could just collect for a long time and never have them all. Look at that wonderful hat. I believe the Door of Hopes are a very underappreciated collecting genre. One of the categories that Door of Hope Mission worked in was not only brides and children, but also what I would call occupational or activities, prominent activities that would occur. And this collection from Mary Sicard's collection has wonderful examples. Several of them I have absolutely never seen at all. The first one is, this is rainy wear for the farmer. Now, there is another rainy wear style, and that collection also has it, but this is one I have never seen with this extraordinary, look at this, woven bat wing cape that attaches to an underskirt. You can see the looping on the top there, how it attaches, and would keep his entire blue denim costume dry when he's working in the fields. The farmer appropriately is working with bare feet because he's working in the mud. He has little roll-up pants, and his queue, his little pigtail, is a carved one, and if the camera can catch it, it's wrapped entirely around his head so it won't be getting wet, getting rained on, getting draped. Very, very rare piece. Next we see 3 dolls that are costumed in ceremonial mourning costume, grieving costume for the funeral. The first is the young boy. He has the pom-poms which extend over his eyes, which were to hide his tears, hide his sorrow. Very, very distinctive stylistic method for costuming at that time. He has his queue at the back. He has the hemp-wrapped costume over the linen costume. And he has he's from this original 1910 group that was sent to the woman in Boston. He has the original label on it, son in mourning suit. So he's grieving his father. Next to him is probably his mother, because it is the wife. And she's dressed in her mourning costume. I'm going to turn it around so you can see this costume all the way around. The tradition would be the very, very simple homespun, woven costumes. And again, she has her original tag on her that says widow, dressed for the day of the funeral. The widow dressed for the day of the funeral. And then one more mourner from the funeral, again with very, very simple costume to be worn. Other occupational, some very, very rare pieces in the Mary Sicard collection include the hospital nurse, of which there's probably very, very few of these even known to exist. She has a very interesting logo on her pinafore, which is the same logo that is repeated on the jacket of the next doll, which we're going to show you. And not only is the costume unusual, let me turn it all the way around so you can see it. It has the apron over the striped tunic and straight pants with the little flat-bottomed shoes at the bottom. And now let me tip it so you can be sure to see her hair, which is entirely different. It's got like a looped curl at the front, which comes back and forms into a braid, which coils around the back of her head, and has the original label from Miss Weld's 1910 collection that was shipped to her, which says simply hospital nurse. Next is a bit of a change in pace. This also is from the original collection, the original 1910 collection. Very, very rare model, not part of the standard offerings, and he was known as simply Shanghai Municipal Policeman. And he's wearing his police uniform with his appropriate cap, tunic cap. The hat is actually adhered to his head, which is very different than any other of the Door of Hope dolls, and has his original label and his buckles and embroidery and his boots made for walking. And this fellow, I absolutely love him because he comes with his own rickshaw, because he is a rickshaw puller. And he has obviously been out working that day. His costume is a bit faded, but I've never again seen that model either. He is barefoot appropriately. And when I turn him around, look at his face. He has a wonderful, the artistic carving on his face is just extraordinary. And now look at his very, very different carved hair design at the back. Again, I have never seen that. Very, very different. And a few more dolls I wanted to show you from the Door of Hope collection of Mary Sicard. There are about 50 dolls in this collection, and they are all wonderful, so I'm just picking some out that, well, I guess I do what you all do. I pick out the ones I've never seen before. So these are just very, very different to me, and I wanted to share them with you. I have on this side 4 ladies that are probably from the 1920 or 30 period, and they're very, very modern young girls with their modern short hairstyles or different hairstyles, and so I wanted to show those to you. On this side, very, very different. I don't know her, it almost appears it's a uniform of some type, but I don't know what, but watch when I turn her around and look at her hair. She has a very, very different face, very broad nose. You'll see that again when it comes around. Very beautiful, very different Door of Hope model. And then 3 girls with what I call bobbed, variations of a very bobbed style of modern hair. We have one of them which has almost a more classic bob, a Dutch bob with just cut off sharply, side parted and cut off sharply. And another one that's a little more feminine. It's waved across her face and it has side coils above each ear. Parted on the other side of her head. And very different painting of the faces as well. One of them much more wide-eyed than the other. Very, very different, coming around again for you to see. And then a variation of those 2, which is, please look at the top of the head, see that unusual part, which is like a curved arc right here and then a part going back. The hair separating at the top of the head, going down and cut in a short bob and decorated with wonderful red flowers and leaves. I would have said poppies, but knowing flowers is not my strong point. I tend to say the wrong one. I think she's wonderful. If you could actually feel the ridges of her hair and feel the comb-marked detail of the chiseling of the hair, it's absolutely beautiful. She has a wonderful face, I think, too. She's very eager looking, interesting. And then finally, 3 that I wanted to show you that are very, very different. We have right here, the Manchu woman with her very distinctive, stylized, and traditional hair comb style of the era. The single tassel is appropriate. That's what it always was. And when you turn it, you can see the very stylized cut of the hair at the sides of the face. You see the decoration on the headpiece at the back. And notice that this is one of the few dolls, the few of the Door of Hope dolls that have a floor-length skirt. Very, very different. This little sweet child has a paper on the front identified by Miss Weld back in 1910 as Buddhist Girl Nun. Now, the Buddhists would traditionally have their hair shaved off, but the little girl was different. She was able to keep a circlet of hair around the crown of her head. You can see how every one of those little hairs is so individually painted. It's absolutely so artistically and beautifully done. And layer upon layer of costume, padded costumes and layer upon layer of it, with wonderful little, different than any other of the Door of Hope, except the next one I'm going to show you. It has the matching yellow boots. Very, very different. Very rare early Door of Hope piece. And then the Buddhist priest with the layered clothes and the matching yellow boots to the little girl, and his very stylized bald pate. These dolls are in wonderful condition. They've been beautifully preserved by Mary Sicard. She's sending them on their way with best wishes for everyone to continue to enjoy them and to carry the meaning of what they had, which was to give young people hope and for the future, and to teach them about the beauty of working with their hands and fine craftsmanship and the love of beautiful things. And she kind of hopes all of you will continue to have that. The Welker collection with the Mary Sicard Door of Hope has been a wonderful collection for me to work with. So many great rarities. I'm happy to share it with you, and I hope that you enjoy seeing them. Thanks very much.